There's an interesting effect up here that can happen at 7:32 on a morning with clouds and sunshine near the end of October. I have to make sure I say that part. 7:32 in June wouldn't work the same. But look at that, if you can see it, there's a kind of glow on the hill, on the hillside. Very poetic. There's a bright golden haze on the meadow. Here's the day I was telling you about when I was just editing the video that I made yesterday and the day before. I said I was in Wamelsdorf, which is back behind me. This is Robizonia. I was a mile south of Wamelsdorf, so I didn't actually get to it. I was delivering that huge load of peanuts that I picked up in North Carolina. Where was I? I delivered in Greensboro, and then I drove all the way across North Carolina to get to some other town that I'll tell you in a second when I think of it. It was Edenton, North Carolina, which is pretty close to the beach. So then I decided to go all the way up the coast on Highway 13 and 113, and that was pretty cool. Oh, that's an Amber Alert. What is it? I bet truck drivers are more likely to be able to catch any perpetrators who are kidnapping people. I do try to remember the license plate number and the make of the car. And then you see them on the freeway signs. There's a chance that I might someday see somebody absconding with someone else. Okay, here's a kernel of what's been bubbling in my head. She just said, accident reported on Highway 222, which is, of course, where I'm driving, because I'm always driving on Highway 222, even in my sleep. It's the end of October. In this part of Pennsylvania, that's the peak. Where I lived in Erie, up near Lake Erie, the middle of October was the peak. Just passed. And here it's a couple weeks later, but it's still amazing. Maybe even more amazing. My kids think so. So go to Vermont, go to New Hampshire. You'll be hard-pressed to beat here. And as I look around me, I think, this is utter perfection. This is exquisite. And then I think about the whole year compared to, say, Columbus, Georgia. I remember the whole year in Columbus, Georgia. I remember liking the magnolia blossoms in the spring, and the climate wasn't too bad, but mostly I felt like it was way too humid and way too hot when I lived there. And there were no days like this. If you look out ahead of us here, you wouldn't look out because in that part of Georgia, the horizons are all so close to you. You never can get up and see a long way. And if you're from the west side of the country, you're used to big skies. You're used to the horizon being far away. I remember when I lived in Georgia, I was always trying to climb up on things because I felt claustrophobic just by how close the horizons were. And it isn't mountainous and hilly like this. And the colors aren't like this. So if this is pretty close to as good as it gets, and then then thinking about the rest of the times that aren't as good, can you say that anything less than this is not perfect? And the answer is no, you need every day that's less than this so that this day stands out. So the other days are part of the perfection. The other days are necessary. And so if you wake up with all the days in your mind at once, because you're an eternal being and you live in all times and in all places at once, then you have to say it's all perfect, everything. And thinking about the accident that's up ahead of us somewhere, thinking about the horrible one I saw on the same road not too far from here the other day, I'm thinking, okay, perfection, right? Perfection. And you have to think about balance in the force. You have to think about that aspect. You need the dark days to understand and appreciate the bright days. And vice versa. You need the hellacious moments to understand peace. And then peace pervades every moment. And that's when you're getting close to where you're trying to get. And that's when you're not afraid of anything. When you love everything. When you love deeply every moment. And then you live in this kind of perfection year-round, lifetime after lifetime. And I don't know that you actually have to go to heaven or go to nirvana or go somewhere that you aren't already. You're already there. You don't have to go anywhere. You just have to realize that you've been there all along and you couldn't see it. And that part was necessary. Looking back at pain that you've endured, looking back at confusion when you didn't understand that everything was perfect. And then you see that every part of it, every part of the journey, the confusion and the pain too, were perfect. It's all in context. And it's all perfect. The leaves fluttering around, that's something. That reminds me of Calvin and Hobbes in the Sunday strips. And I think Bill Watterson grew up not too far from here. He grew up in this kind of environment. His falls looked like this. And his winters looked like winters look in Erie. I don't know that they were as long, but the woods, when he draws the woods, they look like the woods on the farm I used to own in Erie County. I had 80 acres of pristine woods and a few fields. Best hunting anywhere. Just amazing. And that's what Bill Watterson's Sunday comic strips look like. They look just like my farm. The hills and the ravines and the gullies and the leaves, the kinds of trees, the species matched. And he isn't drawing his strip anymore, but it exists. Calvin and Hobbes exists in all times, in all places. The fact that they were here for their time means they've always been here and always will be here. And you think, oh, that's too much. It's just a comic strip. It isn't that important. It isn't that big of a deal. But nothing is insignificant. And from that thinking, nothing is significant either. And that makes everything wonderful. The fact that this time and place is is happening right now in its perfection, even with muddle-headed people that come up in front of me and then slow down, even with accidents, even with pain. Look at those leaves rustling down. Isn't that something? Wow. That was perfect. And it exists in all time, so it is perfect. And everything's perfect. Now, if you let somebody who drives like this mar the perfection, is it their fault? Or is it your fault? I've been watching this new channel. It's called Buckin' Billy Ray, and it's a logger from Canada. He lives just north of where I grew up, and he speaks about things the way I heard things spoken about growing up. He just has a Canadian accent. And Billy Ray says that we ourselves are the problem. I am my own biggest problem, and if I solve myself, I solve everything. I solve all my relationships. I solve the way people act when they're driving or anything they're doing around me, or not where I can see them, because it's all connected. So solving myself solves the whole universe. I have responsibility to make everything perfect. And if it isn't perfect, I'm the only one to blame. I have power to fix everything. And I have responsibility. I have culpability. That's tough. You're walking that edge again with victim shaming or blaming. You're saying that if it isn't perfect, you're saying to other people, if it isn't perfect, it's your fault. You're the reason it isn't perfect. It isn't the Republicans' fault or the Democrats' fault or the oligarchs' fault. You can make it perfect. Right where you are. That's daunting, because it doesn't allow us to blame anything or anyone for anything that isn't perfect. That's really the whole thing. I've been musing about that, not wanting to accept it, not wanting to believe it, but I keep coming around and around and around. I like to go out and around, like Washington, D.C. or Baltimore. I don't like to go right through the middle where all the turmoil is. I like to avoid it. But even so, I can't always avoid what I'm trying to avoid. And that's been the case here. I try to go out and around, but eventually I come to the conclusion that I'm responsible for everything. And there's no need and no efficacy for complaining. It just isn't going to do anything. Or even trying to fix everything. Just getting right to myself, my own emotions, turning the little set screws on my carburetor like I do on a power saw, getting it tuned just right. It's such a sweet sound when it's perfect. And when you get yourself to that place, the place just right, you make a sweet sound. And everything in your